Let's get into the spookiest arc in Ben 10. Galactic Monsters is the fourth major arc of the Ben 10 Omniverse series and is thematically my personal favourite. It builds on so much established world building going back to all the episodes surrounding Ghost Freak, the Halloween show, and the two-part Be Afraid of the Dark special from Classic. From the moment in 2005 where we got the theming of the horror or Halloween-themed aliens, I was absolutely hooked. This arc follows Ben, Rook, as well as Rad, or Rad Prophet Danger Trouble Dudesman, a mercenary for hire, and Hobble, an unnamed sort of bug species plumber. This arc continues his scares journey after once again returning, this time after being trapped in Ledger Domain. He managed to escape in the Omniverse episode Mystery Incorporated, significantly weakened from his time spent there. After sneaking into Plumber headquarters, the Scare coincidentally stumbles across his former henchman Victor, who was encased in stone in the basement. He possesses various plumbers altering the flight logs of a transport vessel called the Lovely Duck to pass by his homeworld in the Anor system. As a bonus, Ben Tennyson so happens to be on that same transport vessel, aiming to return home and reclaim his throne and once again become the High Ecto-Lord of Anor Transil. There's an interference with the ship's engine while flying across the Anor system, resulting in the ship crashing and landing in Anor Transil. This is where we get to see the brand new Saga-specific intro with a reworked theme, new visuals, and a new roster of aliens in the intro sequence, and the Galactic Monsters title over the Omniverse logo. Men of Action absolutely did not have to go to this level of effort for a short story arc, but I love that they did. While we're on the topic of visuals, I love the look of the Anor system. Everything blends so well together. There's a real horror theming which remains consistent with the look of the show more than anything, relying on like a cool purple tones with this bright orange splashes of light here and there that makes it look so distinct. Rad quickly figures out the part of the ship that's broken is unfixable. Rook makes note that his old LeBeau buddy from the Plumber Academy is stationed here on Anor Transil, and that he'll likely have the part they'll need to fix the ship. The group exits the ship. Ben ignores the advice of the others to stay together and keep a low profile, actively engaging with the locals, running around sticking his finger in every resident's face, calling them monsters. Not realising the weight of his actions, absolutely terrifying the locals and causing them to surround him in a panicked mob. This is where Rad explains that despite the locals of the Anor system appearing monstrous to us, the locals view any foreign species as monsters of their own. This is a fun dynamic, having what's normal to us be the inverse to them and vice versa. Ben puts it quite well actually, the whole outsider stranger in a strange land thing. Then completely not getting his own point he just made, pointing out that the residents here are literally monsters. While going about the journey, they end up being stalked by one of Scenario's species, picking off Hobble when he wanders off for a moment. Then Rook. Ben even makes note of how this is a classic monster trope, the monsters picking them off one by one. Not taking the situation remotely seriously, Rad is then picked off before the mummy reveals itself. We get a great little fight between Wildvine and the mummy, their powers and physiology being pretty comparable. Ben actually loses this one after being so self-assured up to this point. The Scare works his way out of the ship, meeting up with his old henchman Crujo, getting him to offload the cargo from Lovely Duck. We cut back to Ben fighting against the mummy, now introduces Cthulhu, who's revealed to be another one of Scare's henchmen. Ben knocking the mummy through a wall in front of a crowd of locals, who all blame Ben for assaulting an innocent mummy. Ben returns to his human form, once again being chased off by the crowd. If I haven't drawn enough attention to it, Omniverse as a whole is such a beautifully animated show, but with the beautiful oranges and purples along with that super detailed, almost surrealist environment, it has a whole new level of visual appeal. He finds himself on a bench by a lake. He shoves a poor innocent girl into a pond, the only person so far who hasn't been immediately ready to rip his throat out. After being surrounded by a crowd yet again, Rook's LeBeau and friend Scout comes in and rescues Ben. We go back to his base of operations, working alone, making do with salvaged technology the best he can. And to the luck of our cast of characters, here's the part they need. Scout lets us know that despite the outward appearance of what people think Anor is, there's very little crime, and that he has the tabs on the very small handful of criminals. As great as this all is, this next scene really shows the difference in tone between Omniverse and Classic. There's a lack of tension that was always present with the monstrous aliens in Classic that isn't really here. Scout and Ben find Rook and the others getting into a fight with Cthulhu. Cthulhu does a really great job holding his own for what you'd assume to be a run-of-the-mill henchman. Returning to the ship, Ben is completely shocked by Ghost Freak's return. There's a reintroduction of that tension that was lacking up until this point, made more impactful by the stunning voice work on Scare's part, as well as the now recently revived return of Victor. This is where it's outright stated that most everyone knows Ghost Freak's real name was Scare, other than Ben, who was entirely clueless, mistaking Rook saying Scare for Rook saying The Scare. Getting into the action, it's nice to see Victor's return. He's one of the more imposing henchmen. I'm not so big on the new LeBeau and Underling, however. I can't work out if it's supposed to be the same LeBeau and Ben fought in Classic, or if he is just a new guy. The outfit doesn't really lend to his appeal. Ben's familiarity with Ghost Freak takes a lot of weight out of the scene. Their dynamic feels almost run-of-the-mill on Ben's end. I suppose after all he's been through, it makes perfect sense to be reasonably unbothered by his presence, but compared to the absolute terror he had in Classic, it just feels so different. I can't stress enough, it feels comfortable, not arrogant. This moment where Victor slams Rook into the ground is a real highlight for me. It's just so appealing. Ben's energy transformation works pretty well against the Scare, it turns out, taking him out with ease, only for his henchmen and the townspeople alike to come to his rescue. Ben now gaining a bit of a reputation as the monster of the town. Scout has a nice little speech about how we judge others based on how they look from our own perspectives. The townspeople reluctantly agree, calling Ben pretty ugly. This was a fantastic first episode of the Galactic Monsters arc. This is such a fantastic way to finish up the first episode I've really liked up to this point. Picking up where we left off with the episode Charmed, I'm sure. Zaskar and his henchmen are confronted by Charmcaster, who wants to reclaim the Alpha Room. It's the artifact responsible for all magic flowing throughout the universe. Turns out Zaskar stole it during his time in Ledger Domain, Charmcaster being the present ruler of that dimension. We get this grand build-up with Charmcaster about to attack Zaskar and his henchmen, but anticlimactically he teleports her away. Ben screams in the mirror, discovering a pimple as she appears behind him. I'd forgotten the mental state Charmcaster was in at this point, Ben pointing out that she seems more cuckoo than usual, beginning to talk to a magical trinket bag. Rook's convinced the pimples are some kind of curse from Charmcaster. Charmcaster is convinced she can recruit the two of them to help her cause. She is right in thinking this. The two are pretty easily persuaded to join her defeat to Zaskar. The team are pretty upset with Ben. Turns out that he destroyed the replacement part for the ship, and they're all giving him the silent treatment. Turns out Hobble has the hots for Charmcaster. The feeling isn't mutual. Charmcaster barely notices he's there. Ben shows that he's unable to leave the ship. The townspeople have gathered to throw rotting fruit at him if he so much as shows his face. Charmcaster casts some sort of spell to distract the locals. Hobble tags along. Charmcaster finds him pretty amusing. She thinks it'd be fantastic bait more than anything. Turns out Ben's skin issue has resulted in the locals seeing him as a monster like themselves. The little girl from earlier, the one that Ben pushed into a pond, now has a huge crush on him looking like a monster, and she introduces herself as Victoria. The group makes their way to Zaskar's castle, being confronted by these sentient pumpkin-headed scarecrows. I love this theme, it adds so much to the environment, really staying on theme of the Anor system. Ben transforms into Swampfire a second time this episode, looking slightly different than before. They're attacked by what feels like seemingly endless amounts of pumpkin ghouls, only becoming stronger with Swampfire's flames hitting them, only being affected by Charmcaster's magic. They can't defeat them, so the group chooses to run past them instead. It feels like a problem that'll come back later, a horde of them waiting at the front. Turns out Victoria followed them in. They travel through Zaskar's mansion, seeing warped monstrous versions of themselves in the mirror, everyone transformed other than Ben. Their monstrous selves come out of the mirror attacking them. Ben transforms into Swampfire again, this time looking even more different. Turns out you can just shatter the mirror creatures without too much effort. Reaching Zaskar's throne room, he was just sitting there waiting for their arrival. Zaskar mocks Charmcaster, letting her take the Alpha Room now that it's drained of its power. It's actually kind of nice seeing him get a win for once. The team is then teleported out of the property. I was right, they had to face off against the pumpkin ghouls again. Turns out the Alpha Rune wasn't fully drained, empowering Charmcaster, who absorbs her stone creatures, getting this super cool runic armor. I just love this design. She betrays Ben and the others, immediately attacking them. Turns out Ben agrees with me. Ben says the suit of armor is still pretty awesome, even if she's turning against them. Ben's Swampfire transformation goes through another change, becoming, as Ben puts it, in season. Now able to command the pumpkin ghouls, along with what seems like a major power boost to the transformation. Rook defeats Charmcaster with some magical powder given to him by Gwen, then uses Gwen's spellbook to teleport Charmcaster away. Seems like Rook's pretty talented at using magic without any level of practice. Ben transforms back into his human form. Turns out the pimples are a result of Swampfire blossoming into his new form. The little girl from earlier, Victoria, is now totally disgusted by the sight of Ben storming off. It's revealed that Charmcaster was set back to the Ledger Domain by Rook. I'd forgotten how funky it looks in Omniverse, so abstract with such vibrant colours. It's then revealed who Charmcaster was talking to before the credits roll. Once again, another strong ending to an episode. I really enjoyed this one. I had remembered the evolution of Swampfire feeling like it happened over a longer period of time, but I suppose there's only so much you can really do with a 20-minute runtime. Next episode, we pan back into the shipwreck in the middle of the town. Rad's still working repairs, still unhappy with Ben. Turns out Ben has made a bit of a jerk of himself, Hobble listing everything he's done wrong so far. With the group taking off, happy to leave the Lord Transil behind them. We come back to Zaskar in his lair, talking to a severed hand of Lord Transil, planning to revive him with the power of the now drained Alpha Rune. With some protest from his henchman Victor, expressing his discomfort bringing back Transil and Annie Vladat, a species who enslaved his people and used them as a food source. Zaskar plans to control the Vladats, telling Victor not to worry. The revival goes as planned. Before we get the reveal of Lord Transil, we cut back to Ben and the team. The Omnitrix detects the extinct species DNA on the surface. Rad ejects Ben from the plane. It feels a bit harsh on Rad's part, but I suppose the Omnitrix came through with Astrodactyl. Rook pressures Rad to turn around to pick up Ben, threatening not to pay him. We cut back to Zaskar and his team watching Lord Transil reform. Victor protests again, Zaskar seemingly more optimistic. Transil immediately tries to feed on Victor and the mummy, being attacked by Zaskar, who possesses Transil as a way to restrain him for a moment. Transil refuses to work for Zaskar, calling out all the other creatures that only ignore Transil as lesser creatures than him. The two make a truce, planning to take over the universe with Zaskar's possession and Transil's mind control bats that he can spit out at people. Ben walks through the town with the others. Turns out the entire population has been taken over by Transil, followed by Scout, Rook and Rad. He doesn't stick to Hobble, however, who's got a barrier of mucus making him immune. They've done such a fantastic job at introducing a new villain, having them feel like a real threat so quickly. We have characters like Victor, terrified and angry that he's been brought back. It's incredibly effective. Back into the plot, the Omnitrix has finished the new Lifeform DNA acquisition. Certainly handy timing, we're introduced to Vampire, Ben's Vladat transformation. Ben sends out his own mind control devices, taking control of Zaskar's henchmen. Wonderful idea, swapping allegiances for each character. Ben as Vampire manages to overpower a crowd along with his friends, sending everyone flying. Again, another excellent showing of show don't tell when it comes to how powerful a species is. Ben goes into hiding with Zaskar's henchmen, working on a plan of attack. Turns out Zaskar's big plan was to revive the Vladat species as a whole, using Transil's DNA as the key, using that army of cloned Vladats to control every population of every planet they come into contact with. Ben and the others break into the lair. We get a role reverse fight between good and bad guys. I am still so thrilled to bits with the reversed allegiances. I think it took me a very long time to get sick of this concept. Ben and Trancel face off against one another. Trancel tries to hypnotise Ben, but Ben's will seems too strong, although I'm pretty confident this is the Omnitrix is doing. After reverting back to his human form, the Omnitrix's green light burns Trancel slightly. Moments before Trancel's mind control bat makes contact with Ben, Victor swats it out of the air, revolting against Trancel. Giving Ben enough time to transform into atomics, everyone is absolutely shocked by this. I'd like to think these people are probably pretty familiar with what this species is capable of. Ben's atomics creates a small sun, destroying Zaskia and rendering Trancel useless, freeing all the mind control people. Victor takes hold of Trancel, holding him into light, choosing to lock him away somewhere where will never hurt anyone again. This is a nice little footnote on Victor's character, sticking on theme with this whole what we perceive as monsters versus what those monsters really are. Scout thanks the plumbers on behalf of the Annual system as the team takes off. It's revealed that Victor has placed Trancel inside a glass container and has left him just close enough to Annual's sun that he sits there and slightly takes non-fatal harm over time. This has been such a great little story arc. I've had so much fun with it. These episodes are so worth a revisit. The theming is great, the visuals are amazing, the characterization is so much fun, and the world building is even better. More than anything, the environments and the lighting stand out. Doesn't hurt to have a new transformation unlocked either. I'd love to know what you thought of the Galactic Monsters arc. Thanks for watching.